Hello and welcome, folks, to the Let's Go Devils podcast, State of the Fan Address. My name is Nick Villano with the Pucks and Pitchforks blogs. I'm here with the one, the only, Sam Wu. Sam, how are we doing?
Doing great. To tell you the truth, I'm shocked. We are on air right now. We did it. Well, we went to the 11th hour of July 1st. Free Agency Day. The start of Free Agency Day started at noontime, and we still don't have internet, so we decided to rig up something because I decided that the bunker studio is the way to go for tonight. That's where I'm at, somewhere in beautiful New Jersey, and have the State of the Fan address, discuss Devils free agent signings on Facebook Live, YouTube Periscope, and Twitter, and streaming live on letsgodevils.com. Shorts Guy, thank you for staying up for this late owl night podcast. Wow, there's a lot of people filing into this Facebook Live group. Thank you for staying up tonight. All right.
Yeah, we also
where do we start?
Guy here. Yeah, no worries. We have Shorts Guy here. So, Shorts Guy, how you feeling? It's been 11 hours since free agency opened up.
You know, I'm feeling that the Devils did a little bit of work today. They got some size, a little bit of protection for Hughes and Simmons, which is great. But I'm going to read a direct quote from a friend of mine who's a Rangers fan, which I thought this was the best part of the day, which there's been a lot of Devils fans kind of being, a little worried about the Devils being so quiet. But I got this text message today. It says, let me see. The Devils' inactivity today makes me think they're trying to pull off a big trade and has me worried.
It's always great to get a Rangers fan shaking in his boots. That's probably the best thing we could do on July 1st.
Exactly. How are your thoughts on today?
I thought the Devils did fine today. I think that teams in the Metropolitan Division got worse than them, and I think only one markedly got better than them, but we could kind of get into that in a little bit. I kind of want to talk about the Devils' moves. One specific move to start. So the Devils, they, unlike last year, they actually did make an NHL roster move on July 1st. They signed former Philadelphia Flyer, and most recently with the Nashville Predators, they signed Wayne Simmons for $5 million on a one-year deal. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. He made a lot of interesting comments in the conference call today. We need to unpack the contract itself, but Shorts Guy, I want you to tell me, what do you think that he's going to bring to this team in 2019, 2020?
Easy, size and grit, and he can still put the puck in the net, and I think that's going to be fantastic. I think that'll be fantastic for Hughes. There's a little bit of protection there, especially if he skates with him too. Plus, coming from Nashville, I got to wonder if there's a connection with, Subban. Whether Subban had something to do with this too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of them to have in common there. There's not. I think it's very interesting that we have, the two big acquisitions are, two African American hockey players, which you don't have a ton of in the NHL. In Newark, where they're trying to gain a foothold. So I think, we don't have to get that far into it, but I think that that's definitely significant, just because there's not a ton of them. And the Devils went out and got two of them, probably two of the most prominent ones in the game today. Dustin Byfuglien's up there, obviously, too, and there's a couple others, but I think it's a big move for a lot of reasons. I don't know if he's going to play on a line with Jack Hughes because is on the decline as far as goal scoring. He is on the decline as far as speed skating. So I don't know if you want to put him on a line with him per se, but definitely probably put him on his power play line because I think that they're going to put Hughes in the second power play, at least to start. And I think that he does really well scoring on the power play. He's really good with the man advantage. And as we know, there was times where the Devils were frustratingly bad on the power play in the past 2 seasons, really. Even the year they made the playoffs, sometimes that power play would stall for 3 weeks, it felt like. So I think having a guy like him, I think he's probably the Boyle replacement to start, but he'll probably play on that third line, probably in the right wing. And then, I think the Devils do have another move in them, which we could get to in a bit. But Simmons, the funny thing about Simmons is his season was going all right in the first half of the season. He scored 6 goals in the first month. And I think he scored 5 in the next 2 months combined, but he was on pace for 20 goals for another 20-goal season. And then he scored 1 goal in his last 24 games. The Nashville Predators traded for him, and he was unplayable in Nashville at times. And he only played 2 playoff games, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head whether he got injured or whether he was just sat because he was ineffective. But I think that it's a good gamble. He said during the conference call that he's already been working out, and he feels like we're going to see a whole new player than the one we saw last year. Maybe he was injured, maybe he was, maybe he didn't have the best workout plan. I don't know. There was rumors that he was dealing with some nagging injuries, but I think it's a good no risk signing. It's 1 year, $5 million.
Yeah, and that's the key thing about it. It's 1 year, it's $5 million. So if it doesn't work out, well, then you let him walk, and he can come in, and with that also being only a 1 year deal, he has there's a lot in his corner to prove, to show that he should get a second year or a third year, get a contract extension from the Devils. So it behooves him to play really well next year and to attempt to get that extension and to continue playing for the Devils if he likes it here. And, hopefully he does. Hopefully he's effective. And like you said, the power play, I mean, any help on the power play, which looked terrible, is good. I'll take any help there.
Yeah. I mean, there's the power play with just times where just pull my hair out annoying. And, especially after they lost Boyle, who brought something to that power play, the big guy who could stand in front of the net, get those dirty goals and just a timely shooter. And obviously I think that Simmons is better than Boyle is even. So I think they're getting a good player. They're not getting a great player. If he's playing in the top 6, I'm a little worried. And right now I guess he's slotted to do that. There's a lot of shuffling that has to go around, whether, what you want to do with Zacha long term, and whether you want him to play 4th line center or 3rd line wing or 2nd line wing, or there's just a lot that still needs to be figured out. And I think we're going to go into the the preseason not knowing what they're actually doing with that. But
yeah,
Simmons is a player that they need a right winger. They needed to add to the right wing, and even if they got a left wing and they can move Bratt to the right wing, they're still needed another right wing. It's just a fact, and I think that this is the right move for what was out there. Teams weren't getting these deal contracts except for maybe Panic to the Capitals. That was the only thing that I thought was a real deal. And obviously $5 million for Wayne Simmons after the season he had isn't a deal, but not having to give him any term at all, I think the Devils came out like bandits.
Yeah, and that's the big thing on free agent day that I never want to see the Devils do, and I never want to see them overpay and just to buy for the sake of buying, which they didn't do last year and they didn't do this year. And I'll take Simmons for 5. And he's a good player, and giving him only that one term, that 1 year deal, again, it's to our benefit. It forces him to prove his worth and to go for that extension. And you want to know what? If he gets into camp or if he's in practice and he's in a new environment, new city, new team, and just starts, playing a lot better than he was last year, you know what? Then I don't mind him playing in the top 6 there. If he's going to be on the 3rd line, then so be it, he's on the 3rd line. But I think that he's bringing in some toughness, which, is always good. And I think the St. Louis Blues were kind of like a bang up team that, they were willing to hit and to be physical, and that won them the Stanley Cup. So you really can't, you still need that in today's NHL, whether or not people, like it or not, or if they agree with that or not. You still need that bang up style of player. And I think he's going to fit that mold really well.
So let me ask you this. What in your opinion, would make this a successful signing? What do you have to see from Simmons?
I'd like to see Simmons, if he can get to 15 goals, I think that'll be fantastic. If he's between the second and third line, I'll take that too. And I want to see him drop the gloves a couple times. I think that'll be fantastic.
Hey,
Like if
So
if he
you
can
only
just be
you only need him to score 15 goals for this to be successful.
I'll take 15 goals. Yeah. I mean, if he scores 20, even better. If he scores 20, even better. I want him to be that good character player to come in. The one quote I saw from him today saying that he loved the fact that Hines said that, he was looking at Simmons as a piece of the puzzle, give him that, the role, or give him that place on the team. But yeah, I'll take 15 goals. And you know what? If he's gonna be that size guy to at times protect Jack Hughes, and I'll take that too.
So he hasn't scored 15 goals in a full season, as little as 15 goals in a full season, since he was with the LA Kings in 2011. He scored 15 in 2013, but as we know, that was the lockout shortened year. This is a guy, 17 was the lowest he's hit since that lockout shortened year. And since then, he's had no less than 24. So I think that it's reasonable to expect that, after, he had a 4.8 shooting percentage with Nashville. 4.8, and it's clear he lost a little bit of confidence because he only shot the puck 21 times in 17 games. So he probably felt a little bit snake bitten. But this is a guy that, he averages between 13.5 and a 14.5 shooting percentage for most of his career. So if you just get him back to that point, I think that even if you get him to 12.5, I think you get him to 20 to 25 goals.
I'm kind of undercutting what I want my expectations to be, because I don't want to be disappointed too. I want as many goals as we can possibly get out of him. And I think we have to see who he's going to skate with too, and see if he is going to be on that second or third line. I think that's going to, do a lot as far as saying what he's going to be able to produce. And if he's on that power play line and he can bring that to become more successful than it's been, well, that's even better too.
Yeah, I just hope he opens up the ice. He opens up the ice in the corners. If Wayne Simmons is throwing his weight around in the corners and freeing up Jack Hughes, if he plays on that Jack Hughes line as a second line, I think they're going to – when Jack Hughes has room and with that speed and skill, he's going to get around people. And I think that's part of the reason why they got Wayne Simmons, is for that toughness, is for that grit. And that was one of the things I said on the previous podcast. Who do I want to see the Devils sign? Well, I went with defense with a stopper, but they need some big guys to push people around. That was what Boyle's role was. Is it now Wayne Simmons' role? To have that big physical presence. He's not as physical as some forwards, but he gets in your face, he'll muck it up, and he does score goals.
Yeah, I think you're easily expecting all those intangibles, the hits and the rough and tumble in the corners and the board battles and him throwing his weight around. I think those are the things you kind of expect, and I think it's been pretty clear that the Devils have needed that. I think they were missing that element. I don't think it would have made a big difference if they had that element, because they had Boyle. Boyle does the same thing, but Boyle has limited 5-on-5 ice time. So I think Simmons is a guy you could put out there for. I'm trying to see what his time on ice was this past year. I'm not seeing it. Either way, I think it's a guy that could, if healthy, if what he's saying is true, I think you could still get 16 minutes out of this guy on average. And, in those 16 minutes, if he's not playing the PK, because the Devils have some of the best PK forwards in the league, so you don't need him there. So you're only playing him on the second power play. That means you get him plenty of 5v5 time, and that's just going to wear the other team down. Whether he's playing on Hughes' line or not, I think the Devils have been known for making those matchups. So say he's on the third line, then you have, a Zajac, Coleman, and Simmons, or probably Zajac, Coleman, and Simmons would be that line, and they're just going to wear down the other team's top line. Whoever it ends up being, if it's Kakko and Panarin on the Rangers, they're going to wear them down, and then once they, get out the Nico and the Hughes lines, it's a lesser line. It's a lot that speed is really going to be able to take precedence, and especially say the Devils make no more moves, which I don't think is happening, but say they're done. I think that you keep Simmons on the third line. And then I think if they're done right now, you're putting Jesper Boquist on this team, and you're kind of moving the guys like Joey Anderson and Nathan Bastian and Mikey McLeod and those guys. I think you're giving another start in Binghamton, and you have them on a good Binghamton team, and then you have a second line. You could have a second line of Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, and Jesper Boquist, and that's like putting the Acme firecracker on the back of Wile E. Coyote every time you put them on the ice, because they're just going to fly around like crazy. And with that, when you play at that kind of speed, there comes some issues. But I think with the skill that these guys have and how young they are and how good they expect to be, I think that even with no more moves, I think this team could still be really good.
Oh yeah, no, I totally believe this team can still be good. And even if Simmons is on that third line and not playing with Jack Hughes, let's say someone tries to, take a little bit of a, losing the word here, but try to rough up Hughes a little bit. The next line, you throw Simmons out there, not an issue, and he can take care of that guy for you. And I think I found the on-ice time for last year that you're looking for with Simmons. With Nashville, he was averaging 12.27, and with Philly, he was averaging 16.33. So not too bad for on-ice time. Not, you're not looking at top-tier time right there, but you know what? If he's getting between 12 and 16 minutes, let's cut the difference and say he's going to get 14 minutes. I think he'll show his worth in a bunch of different facets of the game, and it may not always come to goals, but I think he's going to show his worth coming onto this team, especially being a character player. And not for nothing, we have a lot of young guys. We need as much character. We need to help these guys build and grow into full-fledged professionals, and we need them to win.
I like what Roger Vincent said. He said, kind of like Wood, Zaka, Simmons, big body, some speed, and could feast on the other team's bottom sixes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the one thing that's clear is that our bottom six is going to be worlds better this year. No matter how you put it together, putting Zaka at center on one of those bottom six lines, and especially, and I feel like we say this every year, so I kind of hesitate to say it, but especially if you get that Zaka from the last few weeks of the season, who's just playing much better. Even if you get the full season Zaka after he came back from Binghamton, I think that's having him at fourth line center with how much skill he has and the size he brings. And you add Wood, who's still probably the fastest guy on the team. I think that's just a major upgrade from last season.
Well, that's depth. I mean, that's plain and simple. There's depth. You could roll four lines right now. Jack Hughes, although the Devils did get lucky to get that pick, changed the mindset and changed his lineup. Down the middle, Heischer, Hughes, Zajac. I mean, who do you put on the floor? Zaka at center? You want to put him in the center?
I think you would go in the middle.
Yeah, but Zaka's fourth line center, that's such a better fourth line center than last year. I mean, that's not a bad four going down at center. I'll take that. over last year.
And I see in a comment, where I see it, I saw Eric in the comments said that I think he was referencing the Bratt, Hughes, and Boquist line is fast but small. I get the premise, but small is a thing when I feel like small is an issue when there's one guy on the ice who's super fast but small, because then he's the guy that everybody's focusing on. But if you have three players who can outskate everybody else on the ice, I think then small doesn't become as much of a factor, because even if you get that hit off, he's going to get the puck up and he could put it on their stick, and then you have a breakaway. So I think teams are going to be a little bit more hesitant to make that open ice hit, because they know that if the guy gets the pass off, then it's a 50-50 shot to get a goal.
Oh yeah, and you know what? Small is one thing, but if you got small and fast, you got to catch them before you can hit them first.
Yeah, I just think that's where the NHL is going. I just think that it's going into not exactly smaller, because everybody and their mother are talking about how the St. Louis Blues won being big. Not really.
Yeah.
They won because they got Ryan O'Reilly, but whatever. We'll just skate past that part. I think that the Devils are building correctly.
Yeah, oh no, they're absolutely building correctly, and I don't think about St. Louis. Real quick, going back to that, I don't know if it's so much about St. Louis being big. It's just St. Louis was willing to hit and muck it up, where a lot of speed has come into the game in the last couple of years, and that hitting style, that rough and tumble style seems to have gone away. But that comes from Berube as their coach as well. So, but the league is definitely it's becoming more of a speed and skill centered game, where you have these smaller players that are able to flourish and don't have to worry about that, getting destroyed like they used to, going down the middle.
So I think we just talked plenty on Wayne Simmons. I still don't think that's going to be the biggest move of the offseason, but
No.
Shorts guy, there was some of the biggest moves in the NHL today happen in the Metropolitan Division, and some of these teams got a lot better and some of them got a lot worse. Now I want to talk about the unfortunate team that got a lot better, and that's the New York Rangers. I mean, I think Adam Fox was a decent move. Obviously Kakko is a great, a great lucky piece that they fell into, like we luckily fell into Jack Hughes. And then, they made the move to get Trouba, who I think is a really good defenseman himself. But, the biggest move they made was obviously today when they signed Artemi Panarin for, just under $12 million per season for 7 years. So, Short Scott, what do you think about the Rangers' move so far?
The Rangers are improving, and that's without a doubt. I think 11.6 per season for Panarin. That's a ton of money. I think I was looking today, the second highest paid in the league behind McDavid, which to me sounds so crazy that the Rangers are the ones paying those numbers. And it's the biggest, news in the NHL today, yet they were not the lead on the local Channel 4 sports up here. It was all the Knicks and the Nets, which I found hysterical, that here the Rangers and all their fans are loving today, and they're not even top of the sports news today, which was awesome. But the Rangers are going to be a formidable opponent once again, and that's going to, in a sense, hopefully be good for the Devils, because it'll force the Devils to have to try to get better, to keep up, and to get better than them, which I would like to see that happen as well. There can't be any complacency anymore. I think the Islanders were stupid in letting Leonard go. I think they did a lot for him this past season, and I know I'm kind of jumping around, but I thought that was a real stupid move today. What are your thoughts?
I think the Islanders got a lot worse. A lot worse today. They re-signed Anders Lee for $7 million, which good. I mean, we lost out on Panarin, and you had to re-sign the captain at that point. Yeah. You had to do it. So I don't hate that move. The move I hate is replacing Leonard, a Vezina candidate, for Semyon Varlamov, who he has a lot of issues when it comes to off the ice stuff from a long time ago. But whatever. Well, even if you put that under the rug, I just didn't like him as a goalie last year. He got replaced by Grubauer for the playoffs and down the stretch. And it wasn't like a Kincaid over Schneider thing where it was, clear that this was just a guy playing out of his mind. Like, Grubauer is a good goalie, and that's why they traded for him last year, to be the number one guy. And then in comes Lou, pulling a Lou, and signing Varlamov for a 4-year deal for $20 million when they had a guy in Leonard who's younger, much younger, and just was a Vezina candidate. And I did think that Leonard found lightning in a bottle last year, but who's to say that the Islanders weren't his lightning? He couldn't do it again. Instead, they bring in a guy who's a veteran, but is clearly declining. So I think that the Islanders, I think the Devils passed the Islanders.
Yeah, no, I agree. It seems to be like they took something that wasn't broke and they broke it, in letting Leonard go. And it's not like they're saving any money. They could have given him a 1 or 2 year deal and said, okay, do it again, and then we'll pay you, which by all means should have, been some, because he only got a 1 year deal in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. So why couldn't the Islanders give him a 1 year deal? It's not like, Varlamov was, he wasn't I really can't even say you can say he was the best out there, and not say that you couldn't get another goalie through trade. But I just think that move just perplexes me, because just the way he was, they did a lot. The team did a lot to help him personally, and he showed up on the ice and did a lot for them, in the wins column, and then they just kind of let him walk. I think Carolina is doing very similar with their goaltending situation. They're taking something that's not broke and they're just breaking it, which is it just makes no sense to me. The one position to me that you always want to have a consistent person that knows your team is your goaltender, and they're letting both teams are letting them just go. I don't get it.
I mean, we saw last year the goaltending position ruined the Devils last year. It ruined them. They were out in December because Corey and Keith Kincaid could not figure it out. They were both bad. The only time we ever had hope was when Mackenzie Blackwood came in December, put a few good games together. And then, by the time Corey figured it out, it was way too late for our season. I think we had already sold at that point at the deadline. So it was clear they weren't going for anything at that point. But,
by that time, we didn't want any more wins. We actually would have preferred to keep losing.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out. The lottery system is what it is. But, I was of the ilk that, I kind of just took it like I can't root against them day of, like while I'm watching the game. I can't root for my team to lose. But it made the losses that much sweeter knowing that, we were gaining percentage points in the draft lottery. But, and you mentioned Carolina. I gotta mention that Sebastian Aho got offer sheeted. The first offer sheet in years. The Canadians came in with a decent offer. They made it very signing bonus heavy, and then Aho signed it. So now, it seems pretty clear that it wasn't enough to hurt the Hurricanes' chances to bring back their superstar center.
Yeah, the Hurricanes have to bring him back. They absolutely have to build off what they got this year. Otherwise, their fan base is going to be up and around. By, first of all, they're screwing with their goaltending, and then to allow Aho to just walk, I think people would be up in arms in Carolina. So they have to re-sign him. And from everything that I heard in the pressers and stuff today on the radio, it sounds like they're going to. But it's almost like they're going to wait it out and just kind of let the Canadians wait. And in a sense, possibly screw them out of signing other people, over the next couple of days by making them wait it out on Aho.
Yeah, I mean, if what I've read is coming true, I think that I think they've already determined that they're going to sign Aho. Sam, did you have a thought on this?
Well, it's a double-edged sword to play the offer sheet game because Shorts Guy made a great point about the the waiting game. Just wait out the number of days before you do sign them, even though you know you're gonna re-sign them. But I remember Bobby Clark pulled that off with Vancouver, the Flyers. I think it was a Ryan Kessler that they tried to sign to a ridiculous offer sheet just because they
Well, the
could.
Flyers tried to sign Shea Weber.
No, it was also out in Vancouver as well. He went to the Western
Oh, yeah,
Conference.
yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
thought you said
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And I remember at the time, I think Bobby Clark was kind of the first to do it under the new CBA. After the lockout, and is there an unwritten code amongst GMs, which is only a handful of them, is 31 GMs in the league, not to do that, not to screw me up? But what happens if a GM does? What happens? Does that GM get blacklisted by other GMs? Is there a good old boys club in on this? I don't know. I'm trying not to sound like a conspiracy theorist or whatever. But if you're gonna do it, if you're gonna do these offer sheet games, you better go after a player you really, really, really want. But those first rounders are valuable. But at the same time, hey, Ray's got cap space. Why don't you drive up the price, Ray? Like, screw with other teams. But then again, who would make a deal with you if you start doing that in the future?
Well,
Just food for
that's
thought.
why you do it to other teams you don't ever plan on doing business with. But I know Waddell was saying earlier today in his interview that once they lock Aho up, then his summer just got so much easier because he doesn't have to worry about a contract negotiation. That contract's taken care of. It may not be in their complete favor, but things are easier for him personally when it comes to doing business with the team.
Yeah, I agree. I think, but and you mentioned that Carolina did. They brought back Peter Mrazek, and they lost Curtis McElhaney.
They brought
Mrazek's
in
fine.
Reimer too.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me. I don't know why they even made that move. I think their goaltending situation is still in flux. I think Mrazek's fine.
Did they officially sign him? Because I didn't. I thought I heard that they hadn't.
I thought they gave him a 2-year deal. I'm pretty sure they gave him a 2-year deal, but I'll double check my own self.
Yeah, I'll check that too. Because last I saw,
2 years, $6.25 million for Mrazek.
Okay.
So they do have two goalies. They have two living, breathing humans that can be in net. How well they're going to play. Mrazek, we've seen him play well. We've seen him play not so well. We've seen him lose games for his team, and we've seen him put the team on his back and win them for him. He's a boomer bust guy, and I think Carolina's in a spot where they needed more. I think that Carolina should, instead of gone after Mrazek, just given a bunch of money at Leonard and really tried it with him, because I think they're in a spot right now where they have the right mix of veterans and young players. They have younger players going into their prime like Aho. And Aho might even be a little bit before his prime, but they have these young players that are getting really, really good. They have the 19-year-old kid who his name's escaping me, but he got knocked out by Alex Ovechkin, but he's really good.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Sorry, that I should know that off the top of my head, but it's just escaping me. But either way, you all know who that kid is, and they have a lot of really good players, and I don't think that they're gonna make the playoffs next year now, because that having questions in net will ruin a team. Just ask Philly, and they're a team that got marginally better, I guess, in this offseason. They got Kevin Hayes, and that's definitely an upgrade. And if Nolan Patrick could do anything, that'll be better for them. And they got Matt Niskanen in the trade with the Capitals, so they made a couple moves, but I'm not I think it still puts a lot of faith in Carter Hart, and there's still the Gostisbehere questions going in with them. But I just think there's a lot of question marks. And then, you had Pittsburgh at Brandon Tanev, which I thought was a terrible signing. I thought it was just as bad as the Jack Johnson signing from last year. And I think Pittsburgh, why did you trade Phil Kessel? I actually like the Phil Kessel for Galchenyuk trade because of the situation they're in, but it's a downgrade. That's there's no question about that. They just put themselves in the position where they had to trade Kessel, and they got a decent player in return and a decent prospect. But at the same time, they're still worse. And they used that cap space to get Brandon Tanev. You need to get a better player with that cap space. There was better players out there, and I think Pittsburgh got worse today.
Yeah, unless they believe that Tanev fits in better with the team than anyone else that was out there. Those are the intangibles that we just don't know, not knowing the locker room or knowing these players personally. So, from the outside, it may not look good, but we don't know all the inside stuff, which is, kind of always the thing with, we look at with Shero and wondering who he's going to sign, and they know best what's good for their team, which is why I don't think that we're done yet, because they know what's out there. They knew what they can get, and I guarantee that the phones were ringing today, and we just haven't seen that final move yet.
So, Short Scott, let me ask you one thing. So, when looking at the Metropolitan Division right now, I personally think that the only lock is Washington. That's the only one I'm going to go into next season. If the roster stay as they are right now and say this team is making the playoffs, Washington is the only one that I'm confident in. Am I wrong in that assessment? Do you think that there's other teams that I'm maybe overlooking or that more of a lock than I think they are?
Well, I think the Blue Jackets have officially fallen out of the playoffs and way, way down, which that's got to really be hard to be a Blue Jacket fan today. To watch a couple of your big pieces just fall away.
They got Nyquist.
Yeah, but you know what though? Who's their goalie?
I don't know. Is it Jonas? Just Corpusalo?
But exactly. But that's my point. Like, who's their you don't know who their goalie is. They lost Bobrovsky, who may not have had the best as far as playoff stats were concerned, but he definitely kept him in all those games, and he was definitely a very good goaltender. But I think the worst off today are the Blue Jackets. I think the Rangers have improved. I don't know if they're necessarily a lock for the playoffs, but I think they definitely improved themselves.
Well, basically the Rangers siphoned some of John Davidson and Panarin out from the BJs. It kind of shifted.
You absolutely have to definitely consider that. I don't know if the Hurricanes are a lock for not making it. I don't know where they're going to end up. I think that they can still build off of last year if they can figure out their goaltending. But yeah, Capitals, totally making the playoffs. The rest of them, I think the Hurricanes have a good chance. Blue Jackets have fallen out. The Rangers have a chance. I think we have a chance absolutely making the playoffs. But yeah, the Capitals are the only lock that is there as far as making the playoffs are concerned.
Yeah, if you asked me to pick today, I look at this division and the Rangers still have a question mark because Henrik Lundqvist hasn't been good, but has he not been good because he's been on a bad team and he's just kind of going through the motions? And that might be true. He might be reinvigorated if the Rangers went all in. So he might have a better season. So I think the Rangers do have a good shot. With Carter Hart, the Flyers finally have that right player in net, but is it too late? Claude Giroux is not on the right side of his prime, and Jacob Voracek showed steep declines the past couple of years from his peak. And, they don't have Simmons anymore. They just paid a boatload of money to Kevin Hayes, and, they're really locked into him as their second line center. And, how is that going to impact Nolan Patrick as a whole? Is he going to get better? Is he going to get worse? So, how is that going to help his confidence? And And then the Penguins, they have Sid and Gino, so that's always going to keep them in games. But Matt Murray looked human last year. He didn't look like the kind of guy. I mean, look at what the Devils did to Matt Murray. The Devils owned Matt Murray last year.
They owned him.
So
Absolutely,
I think that there's more. I know a lot of analysts are saying the Metropolitan Division are almost a lock to get 5 playoff spots next year. But I think there's just too much flux, and I think this division's going to beat up on each other. And there's no bottom feeder. Maybe Columbus. Columbus is is the most likely to be that 75-point team. But every other team, I expect to have 85 to 105 points.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at the stats from last year, you needed. The Blue Jackets were the 5th of the Metro Division with 98 points. So just to make the playoffs in the Metro Division, you had to have almost near 100. Now, I'm going to bring this up. I think the Panthers getting Bobrovsky today gets them that extra 8 wins that would have gotten them into the playoffs from this past year. So I think saying that the Metro is going to have 5 teams making the playoffs, I think you can't discount the Panthers in signing Bobrovsky and doing for the Panthers what he did for the Blue Jackets and getting them in at the bottom of that playoff list. I think his play, I think kind of shifts that, maybe one more playoff spot to the Atlantic versus, from the Metro, which would mean that, even still at, the Hurricanes had 99 points, you still had to have, damn near 100 points to get into the playoffs in the Metro Division.
Yeah, and and the Canadians are a decent team, and the Sabres have made moves to get better. And the thing that's in the favor of the Atlantic Division is the Red Wings and the Senators are both probably still going to be bad. Especially
still
the Senators.
Weird to hear the Red Wings being bad. It's just, to me, it's still so weird. Growing up in the 90s and the Red Wings being that powerhouse, it's just weird to see the Red Wings being bad. That's just me. Sorry to interrupt. I just had to say it.
You're fine. The blue line just isn't that good, and it really kills them on a nightly basis. They just give up too many goals, and Jimmy Howard's just not in a place where he could steal that many games anymore. He's still good. He's still a starter caliber goalie, but he's in the bottom
not what he was.
10.
He's not what he was.
Yeah, but we got Facebook comments clamoring for us to cover a couple other topics. So, Shorts guy, we have to bring him up. John Garozzo in the comments. He wants to know about Mitch Marner. We saw one offer sheet get signed today. Do you want the Devils to try to sign the Maple Leafs star winger Mitch Marner?
What was Mitch Marner? I'm going to look up really quickly because I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. What was he making last year?
He was making minimum. He was making like $975. I would assume.
Okay, so here's my thing with bringing anyone in. So Mitch Marner is going to command. What would you say would be fair for Marner? Somewhere between 4 and 6.
Oh no, he's looking for 8 and 9.
See, here's my worry with that. I think if you really want to have Hall stay, Hall has to be the top earner on the team. And so let's say you're going to bring in Mitch Marner. Let's say you bring him in at the high end at 9. That means you're going to be having to pay Hall. I think that if you want to make Hall the centerpiece of the franchise, he's got to get at least 10 to 11. So I know we have cap space. Mitch Marner, I think, would be fantastic to come in. I don't know if I would want to take it at that high of, a number at 9 and then have to pay Hall more than that. Because if you want Hall to stay, he's going to want to be the top paid player on the team. And he should be if you're going to make him the center point.
So I'm going to make 2 points of your point. And I was making this point when, there was a rumble that the New Jersey Devils were a 4th team in on Artemi Panarin. I don't know. I couldn't verify that myself. And I think that if they met with Artemi Panarin, it was more a matter of convenience. He was there, and obviously, Yeah, he was already here, and obviously the New Jersey Devils have a very high-profile left-wing contract to negotiate, so they wanted to see what that might look like. So I don't think the Devils were actually ever in on Panarin, and I think it was both sides just kind of touching base and using the other for advantage. But when just in conversation, a lot of people have said the same thing that you just said to me, where, if you're paying Panarin $12 million, then you have to pay Hall 12 and a half. And I disagree, because Hall's the one who came out and said, I want you to get more talent. And then if he turns around and he's jealous or whatever you call it, he's better than Panarin. So he deserves more on paper, but he's the one who's pushing for us to get more talent. And he says the most important thing in the world to him is winning a Stanley Cup. And he knows that these players making $10 to $12 million may hurt that in the long run. Then, he's going to look bad by saying things like, I need to be the highest paid player on the team. So, that's my point on that. But more importantly, I do think that Hall is going to easily make more than 10. I think he's looking at 10 and a half over an 8-year deal. 88 for 84, I think would be fair. I think it will be easily to fit under the cap. I think if you get teams like, if you get another deep run by Boston next year, and you get, a deep run by the Leafs, I know that'll be hard to get them both, but if you get deep runs by teams in big markets and you get the Rangers back in the playoffs, I think that that's going to help the cap go up even more. So I think that Hall, if Hall resigns, I think it's going to be somewhere in the, in the 10 and a half to 11 range.
Yeah. And it's not that I think that Hall wants to be the highest paid player. I do think, though, if you want to make him the center point of the team, you should at least give him that respect and have him up there as the highest paid player. I would love Mitch Marner. I'll take him. And then Sam brought up a great point about if you throw, with him being an RFA, if let's say you do throw a, offer sheet, does that screw us moving forward? So you have to be confident that, one, you're going to re-sign Hall if you're going to do that. And two, be ready to pay whatever, for them to call your bluff, and lose those draft picks, which we don't have that second round draft pick. So, and is Marner going to be worth giving up and mortgaging all those picks going forward? I mean,
I think that's a good question.
And hope beyond hope that those next couple first round picks are the 30th overall pick, or 29 or 31, whatever, that we're going to be, at the top of the league. But is it really worth mortgaging that future and all those picks if, let's say it works? I mean, we got the cap space, yeah, but I want to make sure that we can more, will it be good for the future? Because the Devils are not a right now team. They always are building for the future. And I don't want to ruin that by one offer sheet.
And I agree. I think that if this situation comes up, I think Ray would try to call Kyle Dubas and be like, I'm offer sheeting your guy. Let's talk more prospects and NHL players over me giving you these 4 picks. But again, it's such a long shot. I mean, the analysts have been calling for Shero to sign one of these offer sheets all season long, and they reiterated it. 2 different analysts said it today. And I haven't, just because of how much it costs to do these, and the fact that the Devils don't have the second round pick anymore, and that takes them out of 2 of the best options for offer sheets, I just can't see it. It's, 4 first round picks is, that's a lot. I feel like you could get almost any player in the league if you offered that. Almost every player. I'm serious. Maybe short of Connor.
Yeah, no, and that's really what it comes down to. But and then to kind of play the other side of that coin there too. You don't know if any of those next 4 first round picks are going to pan out to be, much of anything. Or you can screw yourself and, offer sheet, lose your first round pick, have another bomb of a season, and be like Ottawa, where you have a bomb of a season and you have no first overall pick, which would have been pretty high or pretty low, whatever you want to say it, within the bottom or top 5. So it's like, it's such a risk. You have to have, I know there's no guarantee, but you have to be confident that if you're going to do this and then you're going to end up getting Marner, that it's going to work and you're going to do well this season. And you're going to be able to re-sign Hall.
Yeah, no, I mean, I 100% agree. You have to have, I mean, that's a move you make where you call, and Ray said that he called Hall before he made the Subban trade. But that wasn't just affirmation. He was just kind of, reading the room. This is one where he says, I'm getting Mitch Marner. Are you signing on the dotted line? And if he says no, I think you pass on Mitch Marner. I understand that you're paying to, maybe Mitch Marner could be a Hall insurance, but I think with just Marner, I'd be worried about next year's season specifically with Mackenzie Blackwood still, he's just had his rookie season. He's only had about, less than 20 games in the NHL, and Corey is still, I worry about putting all the eggs in the Corey basket.
Yeah. Actually, I had someone that the same Ranger fan I brought up earlier asked me if I would have wanted Bobrovsky, and I said no. I don't know if I would have wanted that.
That contract's going to look terrible in 2 years.
I have a question, Shorts guy. That Ranger fan that asked that question, does he like salad? Is that Ranger fan?
No, different Ranger fan. You've met this particular Ranger fan, but not the salad eating Ranger fan.
Is it the one that asked me if I was Martin Wu? Is that Ranger fan?
No, different one.
Okay. I just wanted to pop in.
So I want to move on because I do feel like the Marner thing is such a pipe dream that, I don't want to give it too much time. But a move that the Devils have been tied to on certain rumor websites is Nikita Gusev of the Vegas Golden Knights. Now I've specifically mentioned him a couple times on Twitter. We're going to have a couple articles on him coming out on the site overnight. You're going to get some late night reading on this guy. But before we get to, get to the reading on him, I've said myself that I think that if the Devils and the Golden Knights do make a trade for Gusev, I don't think Gusev's even going to be the biggest. Well, maybe he ends up being the best player in the deal, but I don't even think he's going to be the biggest name. I think it's going to be some kind of massive deal similar to, like, on a smaller scale of what Colorado and Toronto did today, where they throw in Clarkson's contract and maybe Riley Smith. They just go full bore of kind of a reset. A slight reset. Vegas still has all their superstars, but if they could, turn Gusev and Riley Smith into, an entry level deal, and say, one of the Devils' bottom 6 guys, who's making like around $3 million, and then a pick. And I don't think it has to be the first round pick. If you're getting Gusev and Riley Smith as part of the deal and you're just getting them out of cap trouble that they desperately, and that's the thing about the cap space, so I think that a massive deal could be on the table, and I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but I think that that's what Ray Shero is discussing right now with, the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, no. And I completely agree with that one. That would be, something, that would definitely, it would help the Knights with their cap space issue because they have absolutely no cap space. And it brings in 2 solid players for us. And I don't know, we've been talking about this, the Devils being in this situation all year leading up to this summer, that we're going to be in the position to be like, hey, you have cap trouble. We don't. We can help you out, which I think a lot of that, had a lot to do with with us bringing Subban in, and we can do that as well. And looking at Smith, if I can follow this over enough on my phone, he's still got a couple years for UFA, and as long as they can sign Gusev for a decent amount, I mean, that would definitely help our team a lot. I'd be all for that trade, and for it to be in the works, absolutely. I think Shero is, it's definitely in the works for us.
I mean, as of right now, the Knights are over the cap, and as you know, it's a hard cap, and they still haven't signed Subban, and Gusev is under an RFA contract, so they're over the cap and have to sign people still. So I think that them just taking Gusev does not solve their problem, because Gusev doesn't currently have a contract on the books. That's why I think it'd be something bigger. I think that's why Smith might be part of it. And if they put in, so say they replace one of the roster players now with Smith, and then also added Gusev, that is a very, very good top 9 that you now have. Now, the problem with that is that probably pushes out Jesper Boquist, and Boquist is probably going to have to start the year. I don't want fourth line Jesper Boquist. I think that to have him thrive and to build him correctly, you want him in that top 9 at least, getting at least 14 minutes a game. So, but I mean, you got to kind of look at this as for now and for later. If it does come back to Hall, where if you add Smith and Gusev and you say, look at the skill I just put on this team. Smith is signed for 3 years. You could sign Gusev for a 3-year deal, and then there you go. You now have another deal that's going to end when you have to re-sign Jack Hughes. That's not going to hurt you when he's going to be making a ton of money. I think that this makes perfect sense for both teams. The Knights don't need Smith or Gusev. Gusev was a throw-in from Tampa Bay during the expansion draft. And the funny part is the two players they were supposed to protect are no longer on the Lightning. It was Slater Kokek and I don't remember the other guy's name, but he's not on the team anymore. That's all that's important. And now Gusev looks like he's going to be a really good Russian player that's going to come for cheapish. And I think it's a player that the Devils should definitely target. And I think Smith is another player that they should definitely target. And I think they should try to take advantage of this situation that the Knights are in.
And the more depth that we can bring in and the more competition you can create in practice, you're going to get the best team on the ice night in and night out if you have that competition, which that would create that competition. Yeah, that would mean, maybe Boquist gets pushed out. Maybe you don't see Mikey McLeod may no longer be in the picture either, much to Beer Baron's displeasure. But the more competition you can have in practice, the better you can get out of these players, the more you can push them. And then even still with all that talent down below, underneath and in that bottom 6, you're pushing that top 6. You're maybe pushing Wayne Simmons to do better. You've got a lot of talent around Jack Hughes to help him and for him to help them. I think bringing in more talent and having a deep, deep team does nothing but great things for us. And that competition will create just that drive to want to be on the, in the starting lineup, and that drive to win. It's a no-lose situation as far as I'm concerned. I'd rather have, more depth than not, which is obvious, absolutely. But, at times we didn't have that depth last year. I'd much rather have that overabundance of depth than none at all, like we did at times.
Yeah, of course. I think that's I think it's definitely true. For so long we were fighting for talent. We looked at, especially at points last season where it was just an AHL team, and I think that bringing in more talent, and Ray and Hall both said this at the end of the season, and I'm sure every guy in that room was like, we need more talent, So, it is going to help bringing in Boquist and Hughes and Ty Smith on the defensive end. We haven't even talked about him yet. And bringing in PK and now bringing in Wayne Simmons. Like, that's a lot of talent in itself to add, but there's still more to be done. This team was very bad last season. We got the number 1 overall draft pick for a reason. So I think that if you can add one more piece, I think the defense is fine as is. I think you could add a piece if you wanted to switch out Vatanen, because Vatanen is better on the right side, but he can play the left side. And you want to switch him out with somebody who's signed on for a little bit longer. I could see it happening, but I don't think they need it to happen, because we saw 2 years ago Vatanen was the best defenseman on the team and he carried us to the playoffs. So I think that's that. I think that if you make that move with Vegas, I think this counters the Artemi Panarin move by the Rangers. When you take up the value of Simmons, Riley Smith, and Nikita Gusev all in one, I think you can put that up against what Panarin's going to bring for them as one player, and you could say we got a similar impact.
Yeah, and I also think by bringing in, by drafting Hughes and bringing in Subban, the Devils are now a destination, a team that players and talent will want to come to. Whereas last year, I don't think you can find anyone in the league, unless they were looking for a job, that would have wanted to come here with the disaster that we were. But now, over the course of one weekend, we've completely changed that around to now where we are now a team that's in the conversation, which, we signed Wayne Simmons and 3 role players for the AHL today, but we were still, talked about as a team who's on the up and up, which I think is fantastic. Whereas we weren't that team 4 months ago. So all of this is nothing but positive for us, and players are going to want to come here now.
Yeah. And, we're kind of coming to the end of the podcast here, so I wanted to just quickly hit on the Devils made a couple more signings today, and you just mentioned them. But, they signed Ben Street, Matt Tennyson, and Dakota Mermis. I think it's clear that these are 3 Binghamton signings, but I think I think these are 3 great Binghamton signings. Street is a guy who reminds me of Nick Lappin, who signed with another team today. So you replace him with a guy. He's 32. He knows his role now. He could take. Before today, I think that the average age of Binghamton was 20 and some change. It's an extremely young team. So you bring in these 3 guys who are, I think it's 32, 27, and 25. You bring in some veteran experience for, the AHL. And all 3 of these guys have played well. These are 3 guys who not quite NHL players, but, better than a lot of the players we were forced to play in Binghamton last year.
Yeah, and if the Devils are bringing them in, then I really do believe that they're bringing them in because they fit in the way the Devils want to have this team run. And by sending them down to Binghamton, you're going to train those younger guys, those real young guys, to be ready to make that jump if they need to. So you're looking at exactly what you said: leadership. It's a couple older guys who know how to be in the NHL, teach the younger guys this, and they've got to fit into the scheme somewhere if the Devils are going to bring him in. The Devils are not just going to bring in players just for the sake of signing players. So there's definitely a method to the madness for bringing in, these 3 players today.
And real quick, I just want to bring up the biggest move of the day. It does have a slight Devils touch on it. Former Devils prospect and man that held us hostage for what felt like a decade, Alex Kerfoot, was part of a major transaction. He was sent along with Tyson Barrie and a pick to the Toronto Maple Leafs for Nazem Kadri. I'm just gonna pull up the whole trade. So the full trade was Barrie, Kerfoot for where's the actual terms? Okay. Yeah, it was Barrie Kerfoot, a 6th-round pick, for Kadri, Kyle Rosen, and a 2023 round pick. Obviously, Oh, and I didn't even realize this when the trade first happened, is that Colorado is retaining half of Barry's cap hit in the deal. Um, I think that the Maple Leafs did really well in this trade, but how do you feel about Kerfoot, spurning the Devils to go to the Avalanche, and then now after playing pretty well, he got sent off to Toronto?
You know what? He didn't want to be here. I could really care less about him. Really, in all truth, you don't want to be here. If you want to go, go to Colorado and then get traded off to Toronto. There's no guarantee he's going to make that lineup in Toronto. You would think he probably has a pretty good chance, but maybe maybe they got some plans for him, maybe not. But I could really, when a team doesn't want, when a player doesn't want to be here in New Jersey, I forget about him and I say, forget it. You don't want to be here. I don't care.
Yeah, I agree with that premise. And the funny thing is that they made this trade to open up some value, and they have about $11 million in cap space right now, which would probably be at least right on the cap there to sign Mitch Marner. But Alex Kerfoot isn't signed himself, and he's arbitration eligible, and he's expected to make north of $3 million in arbitration. So right there, the Maple Leafs are back in cap issues again, so they might flip Kerfoot to another team. Who knows? Maybe Kerfoot just keeps getting traded.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. After you were done, that he could just be kind of he's signed for today, but here today, gone tomorrow, type thing, as a package deal, or just I don't know, just to be something else, just to get someone else off the roster too. So that's altogether possible as well.
So Shorts Guy, we only got a couple minutes left before we let the fine Devils fans take their slumber on day one of free agency. But I want to know, what are your takeaways from day one, and what do you expect from day two?
All right, my takeaways, Devils wise, I think the Devils did well. They did not overspend. They're not a panic buying team. They continue that trend. And I'm going to have to agree with my buddy who sent me that text that their inactivity today, or lack of activity, I should say, has got to mean that there's something else going on. And as far as the Rangers getting Panarin, you know what? They signed him. Good for them. I think that contract is gonna wind up hurting them in the long run. What's your takeaway?
I thought they got a decent player, enough player that's going to do some of the things that they needed. But I don't think they're done. And everything that I'm hearing out in the Twitter sphere is that they're not done, and people don't think that Ray is done. There's a lot of pieces still out there. There's a lot of players that can still be had. I made a prediction at about 11 o'clock today that I thought that Ray was going to make what I called a meh signing, and then he was going to make a monster trade. He was going to do exactly what he did 2 years ago when he signed Brian Boyle on day one of free agency and then traded for Marcus Johansson in day two. He's going to do something big on day two after making a depth signing on day one. So, I'm going to continue with that prediction because I'm halfway there. I think that Simmons coming in at 1 year, makes it a little bit better than Meh. I think it's a good upside pick, but I think that could still happen.
And not for nothing, isn't Johansson still out there too?
He was not signed at last check. I've been refreshing the Twitter feed. I do not see anything about Johansson.
Yeah, I'm looking now, and he's not listed as a signing. So, he is still out there now. Whether or not Shero will want to go revisit and bring that relationship back to, to New Jersey, that's a question. I think that Johansson played very well down the stretch in the playoffs, but unfortunately, Johansson, he's one hit away from being out for a very long period of time.
Yeah, I'm going to pass.
My worry with him.
I'm going to pass on Johansson just because the injury risk is just too high. I'd actually personally rather have Brian Boyle, who's also still out there, than
That's correct.
Johansson. Just when you're comparing what they're going to get in term and what they're going to get in price, I think you could sign Boyle and still make a major move for a top 6 winger. So I'm going to pass on Johansson. I know a couple Devils fans wanted to give him one more shot. It did hurt because he was just hamstrung by injuries. Marchand threw an errant elbow at him for no reason, and that really hurt his chances of making a real impact on the Devils because he was just getting his feet wet when that happened. So
yeah,
it wasn't my favorite, but I do think there's moves to be made.
Oh, totally. And I think the Devils are far from done.
Hey, where's the beef?
Hey, there's beef now, Sam. There's beef. What do you think of the beef?
I want beef. I want beef. That's
Sam,
all
you're
I
always
want.
bringing
Is
the
I
best
want
up.
beef. I want size. I want speed. I want somebody crazy. I'm not looking at numbers other than penalty minutes.
Hey,
Guys,
I want somebody
yeah.
to take care of Marchand. You're going to hit our guy? We'll take care of you.
Guys, I
That's what
have to
I
say
want.
thank you for having me on. I kind of felt like a foreigner in a foreign land, even though this is the same podcast group, that I'm with all the time. But it was a good time being on. And before we close and before I forget, oh, there's the jet. Oh, yeah, we want to sell shirts. Buy a Let's Go Devils t-shirt, which I'm printing more this week. We're running low on the black shirts.
Very nice.
But also want to extend, it's 12 minutes late, but happy birthday to Megan McKibben out there. Devils fan from Canada. So happy birthday to her.
Also, we have to congratulate our good friend of the podcast, Erica Wachter, for getting engaged. And I did see in some of the comments that I think her fiance's name is Sam, actually. Not me,
Same
of
as
course.
yours.
I'm happily married. I know Nick's engaged. Shorts guy, I know you have a girlfriend, but Erica, congratulations from the fine folks of the Let's Go Devils podcast and Pucks and Pitchforks.
Yeah, and one last just shout out. Obviously, I did say earlier we are going to have a couple overnight blogs. We don't usually do that. We usually schedule them for the morning, but I think with things happening so fast, in the next couple hours, there's going to be a couple pieces going up. So make sure you check out the blog. Make sure you come back and listen to this because we had a lot of exclusive information coming on the Let's Go Devils podcast. State of the fan address provided by Fansetted and Pucks and Pitchforks. Am I missing any product placement, Sam?
Yes. I also want to thank the fans. Hold on a sec. Thank the fans for their patience. Yesterday, we were supposed to go on air, but I don't know if I should name names. I think I did that on Twitter.
You did that plenty.
Yeah. I went after their social media. It ends with cares. And I said, if you really care, why don't you send a technician and bump somebody, And they'll be here tomorrow afternoon. But we did find a way. We did. When there's challenges, and Nick, you and I had this discussion this afternoon. What do we do? And you said, well, Sam, you told everybody we'll be back by 8 p.m. Today. You can't just bail out. So I spent the whole day going to Lowe's, doing something, rigging contraptions, just so the Bunker Studio has the Let's Go Devils podcast. So if the meteor hits the earth and there's a dark cloud, there'll be cockroaches, the Let's Go Devils podcast, and a Chinese restaurant because there's one in the bunker.
And Twinkies.
Yes, and Twinkies.
Oh, we got Twinkies on that.
Yeah. So,
right.
but thank you, everybody, but we'll have everything fixed and back to normal. Nick, you and I will talk about the State of the Fan address, normal times. Big stuff happening on the Let's Go Devils podcast and State of the Fan address. Big things are happening. But everybody, get some sleep. We're going to end the podcast. Nick, any final words?
No, yeah, I just think it was a big day for the Devils, and I do think you might be waking up to some new Devils tomorrow, and that's going to be fun.
Okay, great. All righty. Well, Nick, you close the show. This is the State of the Fan address, right? Or you want me to close it?
I can close it. I just want to thank everybody on Facebook who stayed up with us. We had double-digit fans on there the entire time, and lots of lively conversations. So thank you guys for staying up with us and waiting for through all the technical difficulties. We understand it's been tough, but we just want to really thank you guys. It's been great. Everybody's been watching on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch, on is MySpace still a thing? Wherever you're listening to the Let's Go Devils podcast. We'd love to have you here, and we really appreciate it. So thank you guys, and look forward to talking to you next time.